Society is a product of the collective human imagination. Matter of fact, most accomplishments and great problems of this species can be attributed to the imagination. Gods, demons, laws, morality, economy, language, they're all products of the cognitive revolution. Agriculture, magic, technology, fiction, psychology. These are all macro examples of manifested fantasy, but the micro proves just as intriguing, as we, on the individual level, are also products of our imagination. Case in point, the Pygmalion and Golem Effects are cyclic phenomena which, when in effect, possess the capacity to alter the individual's personality through a series of events. Put simply, one's actions can impact the belief of others, causing them to then retaliate and reinforce one's beliefs, in turn adjusting one's actions. In 1963, Robert Rosenthal and Lenore Jacobson carried out a series of rudimentary IQ tests on secondary grade students in California. At random, they then selected a number of students to be marked as possible academic bloomers. One academic year later, Rosenthal and Jacobson surveyed the results to find that those randomly chosen students had, in fact, bloomed, despite the earlier prediction being an unfounded falsehood. They later concluded that the reinforcement provided by the teachers who believed in the potential of those chosen students helped the students fulfill the expectations set upon them. And likewise, the golems of the class turned to stone for a sense of inferiority and less conscious grooming. This philosophy rings true throughout most of society and human culture. Be who you want to be, Barbie girl. Fake it till you make it. Even Oedipus, Voldemort and Macbeth, fearful of prophecies set against them, took steps towards preventing them, eventually constructing the very means to ultimately lead to their demise. The Mughal sociologist Robert Merton developed the concept of the self-fulfilling prophecy, arguing that the micro-individual definitions of a particular entity can, in turn, integrate into its later developments, spinning a web of causality whereby eventually the entity becomes the definition, regardless of the legitimacy of the definition to begin with. One could say that the conjured cognitive and corporeal realms are homogeneous, playing off one another, intertwined like perpetually extending and rotating metaphysical snakes, slithering in a circle with the same symmetry and synergy of a perfected tennis rally. In a similar, somewhat less flowery vein, the human attitude is a symbolically interactive psychological construct, used for the apprehension and categorization of particular entities. This could be explicit and implicit, as an attitude develops out of socio-psychological foundations tied to emotions or memories associated with the entity being judged. As such, the sometimes illogical gut feeling is emotional in origin and thusly lacking in substantive rationality. Many attitudes are born out of exposure to a value system, beliefs, religious, moral, micro, macro, educated or not, which entail a certain code, regardless of any blatant irrationalism or oxymoronicism rampant within that code. Conditioned through positive, negative, operant and classical reinforcement and sensory reactions, an attitude can be formed in order for us to evaluate certain entities. This can range from an aversion inspired by past events to an attraction based on aestheticism. Daniel Katz argued there to be 4 functional reasons for the formation of human attitudes. Firstly, we construct and read attitudes so as to make sense of the world and attain knowledge based on assumptive reasoning to assist us in later life. Then, with that insight, we can attempt to predict patterns for easier organization and mental mapping. Second, to communicate and assert an identity or opinion and cathartically release our mental load. Third, as a prerequisite to interpersonal acceptance, improving the individual's adaptive rate and likelihood of fitting in. And lastly, an attitude is constructed to defend the self-esteem of the individual. The individual attempts to justify actions or beliefs held for the sake of identity preservation, and the attitude then dissipates when its function slackens in redundancy. If an experience of unusually tense awareness appears due to the simultaneous holding of incongruent cognitions with behaviour often contrary to the attitude exhibited, the individual is cognitively dissonant. Cognitive theorists contend cognitions to either be consonant, dissonant, are entirely irrelevant to one another. The cognitive dissonant individual can experience virulent symptoms resulting in undesirable physical arousal. They then seek to reclaim harmonious cognition, reforming their beliefs and actions to be consonant. The dissonance is lifted once the individual has added or changed cognitions. Humans don't need to be in direct contact with the entity for an attitude to develop. They can semantically generalize stimuli in order to flesh out their perspective. This associative linkage can either be logically founded or completely fabricated. These cognitive and emotional components present within the formation of an attitude influence its behaviour, which in turn affects the cognitive and emotional components, such as with the Pygmalion and Golem Effects. The unreliable nature of cognition is quite provable through the serial position effect, a phenomenon wherein the recollection of certain items reveals a tendency to favour the beginning and end over the middle. These polar points are known as primacy and recency effects, benefiting from the cognitive processing capacity of long-term memory and working memory respectively. The unreliable nature of cognition is illustrated even further with both the Loftus and Palmer 1974 eyewitness reliability study and the Allport and Postman 1947 schema effect on recall study. In the former, eyewitness accounts of a car crash change dramatically depending on the semantic structure of the question, and in the latter, black and white Americans were separately presented with a picture depicting an argument between a black and white man, and then had to serially reproduce the scene scenario among one another until a conclusion was reached. The white participants tended to alter the tale more, perceiving the well-dressed black man to be at wrong. Adversely, the black participants saw the white man to be the aggressor, least of all because he was carrying a razor. This study concluded that social environment and preconceived expectations can distort both memory and perception. And so, we arrive at stereotyping. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'm new to this whole video essay thing. I'm just trying to adapt a couple of my earlier essays right now. Any support I receive is very grateful, and of course the production quality and overall technical proficiency of my channel will improve as my life does. So thank you very much for watching, and part 2 will be out soon. This is the first video in a hopefully long line of social science, maybe a bit of English video essays that I've been intending to adapt into an audiovisual format for quite a while now, and I'm very happy to start doing this properly. So I hope everybody who watched this have a nice day, and bye.